And we even use the folklore of West Virginia to bring our Fallout versions to life.
Is that the rake? Was that the rake? Was that the rake? Was that the
We have
rake?
all
Shoot him.
Hello, this is CHA0SXIII coming at you from a fortified bunker on the far side of Ohio. And today I'm bringing you my BE3 2018 discussion video. Yeah, I know, this should have been out a long time ago. But there were several extenuating circumstances that kept me from doing this sooner. First of all, I was hoping to stream the event. The reason that I was unable to, though, is that I am literally incapable of doing any kind of live streaming at this point in time. Because my internet is 13 megabytes per second download and 0.90 upload. Yeah, to say that's terabad is the understatement to end all understatements. The other reason is that I wanted to digest the information that we got during the event and give myself some time to cool off, because at first I was kinda upset about Fallout 76, and I was even a bit of a jerk about it, which I apologize for. Now, the third reason is I wanted to wait for any more information to come out about what we learned about. Now, I'm not going to show you footage from the entire BE3 event, because, as you no doubt guessed from the opening bit, due to this being the first time I ever really used OBS, I was a complete noob, and I kinda recorded my audio along with the audio for the event, meaning I couldn't readjust my audio, and I'm very quiet compared to the actual event's audio. Sorry. Like I said, it was my first time using OBS. Good news is the parts that were really salvageable were the parts I really wanted to show. Now, I'm gonna let you see the parts specifically, and then we'll get to talking about my feelings on the three big announcements from BGS. Fallout 76, Starfield, and Elder Scrolls 6. I'll see you in a minute.
We also thought, since we're all here together tonight and it's so special, maybe we'd do something a little different too. And tell you what we have coming beyond this year in the future. We have also been working on a brand new next generation single player game. But this one is in an all new epic franchise. Our first wholly original franchise in 25 years. We're excited to announce our next adventure.
But is it an actual RPG or? Wait. Wait, no. What? What? Are you serious? the hell? Oh my god! It is a thing that's happening!
Starfield is a game that we have spent years thinking about and working on.
But
Something we
isn't an
feel
actual BGS
uniquely
title,
positioned to pull off
or
and
is
that
it
we're
just a
incredibly excited
general
about.
Bethesda title?
But we're also building toward the game after that.
Why?
And it's the one you keep asking about.
Wait. Holy crap, are you serious? Oh my god! And it's in High Rock! Damn it! I was hoping they'd go there! Oh my god! Yes! All of my yes! All of my yes! Now we're just going to be touching on 76 real quick here because I haven't really been following it due to not really being that interested in it, so I basically don't really have a dog in this fight, so to speak. I will say that I am interested in some of these features that aren't specific to multiplayer, specifically the base building. It seems like they're really improving on them, and I'm interested in seeing how they might be implemented throughout future BGS titles across the board. Fallout 76 and Fallout 4 both seem to be experiments. Things for Bethesda to use to test out to see what works for their games and what doesn't. And we've gotten good things and bad things because of this. But all in all, one thing I'd like to reiterate that Todd Howard himself has said over and over again is that single player games are not going away. From everything they've said, both Starfield and TES6 will be single player. Now that doesn't mean they won't have a spin-off at some point, like Fallout 76, where they delve into multiplayer or something along those lines, but the main titles in each franchise will be single player. And to answer your question, no, I'm no longer mad about Fallout 76 being multiplayer. I was at the start, I griped and moaned just like most fans did. But like I said, if this serves as some sort of grand testing ground for new features and how to improve current technology, then I'd say it's a small sacrifice. In other words, yeah, Fallout 76 is going to be multiplayer, and in all likelihood, it's going to be one of the most broken Bethesda games ever. But that means future BGS titles, including Fallout 5, are much better as a result. Then, fair enough. It's a necessary sacrifice. Now, let's move on to our next topic. Next, we're talking about Elder Scrolls 6. This too is probably going to be fairly short, as all we got is the trailer you see playing up there. That's it. Now, loads of people have been trying to analyze it and come up with a where, a when, and a why. And I've done a little digging myself. Now, based on the environment that we can see in the trailer, I've been trying to find Tamrielic provinces that have terrain that match what we see in the trailer. There are some obvious no's such as Skyrim, Valenwood, the Somerset Isles, Morrowind, and Cyrodiil. There are, however, 3 provinces that I found do have terrain that resembles what we're seeing right now. Now, how I came across this is I went to the official wiki looked up the characteristics for the terrain, and then ran that description through several search engines to try to come up with a picture that matched what we were seeing. One is Elsewhere, described as having harsh badlands and dry plains, as well as fertile growing regions covered in jungle and rainforest. Now, clearly this is not the jungle or rainforesty regions within Elsewhere, but I looked up harsh badlands and this is the result I got. Kinda reminiscent, isn't it? Next was Hyrule, which has varying regions, ranging from swampy looking areas to wintry peaks reminiscent of Skyrim, but the one type that stuck out was grassy lowlands. I searched through that, and this was the result. Kinda looking similar too, isn't it? Next is Hammerfell, an arid land consisting mostly of deserts, mountains, and grasslands. And that looks like this too. Alright, failing getting anything off of that, I decided specifically to look at the mountains. The mountains and the coastline are both potential clues to help us narrow down what part of Tamriel we're actually looking at. And Elsewhere doesn't seem to have any such land masses, and it's certainly not by the sea, so that kind of narrows it down to High Rock and Hammerfell. Now, which ones of these could it be? Well, based on all the available data, I have to say... I don't know! Yeah, that's pretty much my sentiment. I can't figure it out. Could be either one. It could be both. Which would be kind of weird, considering we've already done both. Yeah, not even counting the first installment in the video game series, Arena, the very next game in the Elder Scrolls franchise was Daggerfall, which took place in parts of both Hammerfell and High Rock. Now, could this be a repeat? It's possible. The only other possible clue, though, that I can really see is that crater next to that city. A lot of people have done a lot of digging around, in particular, Camelworks, and where there is a city in Hammerfell, where there's a big honking crater right next to it that does seem to match rather closely, it's still not enough to definitively say that this is it. I will link to the video in question below so you can check that out and see where you fall on that, but doing more digging into that, and yeah, it's not as cut and dry as it seems at first. Now, the interesting thing is that Todd Howard said part of the reason that Test 6 was taking so long was due to technological limitations, but he said they were getting close to it. It could be that, indeed, this takes place in both areas, henceforth the need for more powerful technology. He's not just planning on sticking us in one province, or even just one part of a province and one part of another, but two whole provinces at once. That would be pretty darn big. And I quite frankly don't envy him having to figure out how to pull something like that off, if that is the case. Now, until we get more details, I really can't speculate further on it, but I'm quite interested to see what Bethesda has up their sleeve in terms of Test 6. And if we get more information, I may do a video on that. Or not. Anyway, let's move on to the final topic. And this one's gonna be a biggie.
oh my god, it's real, it exists, Starfield is real, it really was real all along, it's real, it's an actual thing, it's like Starfield, oh my god, Starfield!
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about Starfield. Again, we didn't exactly get much from the trailer on this one, but there is at least a lot of speculation fuel here, so let's have some fun with this. Ironically, because this is the BGS title we know the least about now, in a sort of ironic twist, it gives us the most to talk about here because, like I said, there's a lot of speculation fuel here. So, first off, why am I looking forward to this game so much? Honestly, there are a lot of reasons to get hyped over it, and that's not necessarily a good thing. We've seen it time and time again that even BGS titles are not invulnerable to being destroyed by hype. But there are definitely some things to cling on to that are definitely worth at least being cautiously optimistic about this game for. Namely, the thing that's really got me interested in this game didn't actually happen till a while after the trailer was dropped at E3. As reported by CamelWorks, the video which I will have linked down below, he says he came across an unnamed staffman who's been working at BGS on this title, and he quoted him as saying, "Aw man, I wish I could tell you more, but Starfield is the biggest leap in gaming ever." And that alone really wouldn't excite me too much, except, as he points out in his video, and I've been looking back and I have to agree with him, and this is something a lot of other people covering the topic have pointed out. Whenever Todd Howard or Pete Hines get asked about Starfield, they get this funny look on their face, and their mannerisms kinda change. Now, they've hyped their games before, especially Pete Hines. I mean, he's in charge of marketing. That's his frickin' job. He's supposed to hype BGS games. That's what they pay him the monies for. But they've never quite hyped a game like this, saying that this is a quantum leap compared to anything they've done, that this is the biggest sci-fi game yet. They don't do that with their games. Yeah, they hype them, sometimes overhype them. In fact, that was one of Fallout 4's biggest silver bullets. I think even people who really enjoyed Fallout 4 probably were somewhat disappointed by how it did. Not talking about whether you think it was a good game, bad game, or a mid game, that's not a discussion for here. But yeah, hype was not good to that game. Hype is rarely good to any game. Granted, I've also seen amazing games killed by a lack of hype, but overhyping seems to do far more harm in that regard. Now, let me put it to you this way. People enjoy when they find a hidden gem. They enjoy being pleasantly surprised. Nobody enjoys being let down, even if it's just by a hair. That always hurts. Oh yeah, by the way, if you couldn't tell, this is also sort of a mini PSA against getting overhyped for this or any other game. Or just getting overhyped for anything. Let's temper our expectations, shall we? And again, this is something I need to be told. But getting back on topic, the way they react, the way they build this up, and honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if it does manage to deliver. After all, they've been working on an incarnation of something along these lines since before Morrowind. Yeah, let that sink in. Yeah, this started way back when Bethesda decided to start working on a science fiction game called The 10th Planet. And that was going along pretty well from what I gathered until they kind of realized they needed to throw everything they had at making Morrowind. Because if Morrowind hadn't done anywhere near as good as what it did, yeah, there wouldn't be a BGS today. In fact, Bethesda as a whole probably wouldn't have existed today. Yeah. Basically, it was do or die, and they chose do. It sucks, but hey, that wouldn't be the last time they tried this. Fast forward a few years, they decide, let's give it another go. And then they kind of realized they had to apply everything they had to Skyrim. Yeah, this game has been derailed twice now. But after this, they said, screw it, we're doing it for real this time. They took what they had managed to drum up before they had to can it a second time, which they had started originally working on the second draft as early back as Fallout 3, and now we got this third one. Third time's the charm, right? But yeah, this is what Starfield is. It is a game that has been worked on, at least in part, in certain ways, for, wow, over 2 decades. And it is at this point that CHA0SXIII realizes he's becoming an old piece of... Anyway, another thing to be interested in terms of how good this game might actually be, is the animation engine is apparently getting an overhaul. Now, I've heard conflicting reports, both of which have come from multiple quote-unquote reliable sources, that they are getting a brand new animation engine, or that they are just heavily modifying this one. In either case, from what I've seen, they're pulling out all the stops with it, which is further evidenced by the fact that Todd Howard keeps saying that this is a next-gen game. Now, stick a pin in that, because we'll be coming back to that after a minute. Now, an important question here is, what kind of sci-fi game is this going to be? Is this going to be science fiction? Is this going to be science opera? Or some blend between the two? Now, if you don't know, the difference between science fiction and science opera is science fiction is more like Mass Effect. It's stuff that could theoretically be possible with real-world technology. It's basically something that might be possible in our world, based on what we know right now, taking very few liberties with things like physics and whatnot. Science opera is more like Star Wars, where yes, you have your science and whatnot, but you also have your magic, or at least the equivalent thereof, and you have technology that may not be possible in our reality at any given time. And in either case, I'm honestly not sure which Bethesda would go with. I'm kind of hoping for our science opera, mostly because I've given up all hope of us ever getting another good Star Wars game ever. But also because I think Bethesda could do a lot of really interesting things with science opera. Of course, that's not to say they couldn't pull off something really breathtaking with science fiction, but I think the best case scenario would be something that's somewhere in between the two. Now, I have a few ideas on this, but for now, there is something interesting that I came across thanks to a YouTube video I watched by a guy named Just Dom. The video will again be linked in the description down below. But he pointed out something that I had actually noticed shortly after the trailer was initially dropped at E3, and that is, if you look at the bottom left-hand corner right here, you'll notice some words. Now, it's very, very hard to make out, but a lot of people seem to think that the words spell out constant. And I, for one, think the little symbol in front of the C is the symbol for NASA. Could be wrong, but that's my guess. Anyway, Just Dom mentioned something about a Constantine program, but I wasn't able to find anything like that in any of my searches. However, I was able to find something called the Constellation program, and it goes a little something like this. The Constellation program, abbreviated CXP, is a canceled manned space flight program developed by NASA, Space Agency of the United States, from 2005 to 2009. The major goals of the program were completion of the International Space Station and a return to the Moon no later than 2020, with a crewed flight to the planet Mars as the ultimate goal. the program's logo reflected the 3 stages of the program: the Earth, ISS, the Moon, and finally Mars. While the Mars goal also found expression in the name given to the program's booster rockets, Eris, the Greek equivalent of the Roman god Mars. The technological aims of the program included the regaining of significant astronaut experience beyond low Earth orbit, and the development of technologies necessary to enable sustained human presence on other planetary bodies. Constellation began in response to the goals laid out in the Vision for Space Exploration under NASA Administrator Sean O'Keefe. O'Keefe's successor, Michael D. Griffin, ordered a complete review termed the Exploration Systems Architecture Study, which reshaped how NASA would pursue the goals laid out in the Vision for Space Exploration, and its findings were formalized by the NASA Authorization Act of 2005. The act directed NASA to develop a sustained human presence on the Moon, including a robust precursor program to promote exploration, science, commerce, and U.S. preeminence in space, and as a stepping stone to future exploration of Mars and other destinations. Work began on this revised Constellation program to send astronauts first to the International Space Station, then to the Moon, and then to Mars and beyond. Subsequent to the findings of the Augustine Committee in 2009 that the Constellation program could not be executed without substantial increases in funding, on February 1, 2010, President Barack Obama announced a proposal to cancel the program, effective with the passage of the U.S. 2011 fiscal year budget. He later announced changes to the proposal in a major space policy speech at Kennedy Space Center on April 15, 2012. Obama signed the NASA Authorization Act of 2010 on October 11th, which shelved the program, with Constellation contracts remaining in place until Congress would act to overturn the previous mandate. In 2011, NASA announced that it had adopted the design of its new space launch system. Now, one more interesting thing here to note is both Just Dumb and Camelworks, as well as I believe King Fanman, whose video will also be linked down in the description below, and I'm sure pretty much anyone and everyone else who's covered the subject has noted that the space station that we see in this trailer looks pretty much like something that we would conceivably have in the here and now, or at least not too far off from it, and all this together seems to point to one thing. There is a very, very, very good chance that whether it be a science fiction game, or a science fantasy game, or somewhere in between, that it will at least start in our universe, in our reality, or a reality close to it. Now, whether we will be staying here or not is something of a debate. I'm not going to try to point out to the planet or any of the stars that we see, because honestly, that doesn't give us enough to definitively say what's what. I know that some people have claimed that you can match the stars up to real life constellations, and others have said that they don't match any known constellations. But even if they don't, that doesn't necessarily rule out a real world location. After all, expecting Bethesda to get every single star placed 100% perfectly, that's a pretty tall order. However, the wormhole we see certainly does seem to suggest that we'll be doing some sort of traveling. And as King Fanman has pointed out in his video, that wormhole doesn't seem to be generated by the station. Rather, it seems to occur naturally, or at the very least via means outside of the space station or the control of those on board, and the station just gets pulled along for the ride. Now, some people may be dreading the game taking place in our system. I actually was myself, until I saw a video by a YouTuber named Skynet Gaming. I'll link this video down below, but what he pointed out in this video is that our system would actually be a really interesting place for a game like this. So, if nothing else, he certainly sold me on the concept. But the question remains, just what kind of game is this going to be and where is it going to be. With QuakeCon not too far off from now, we may get some new information, but for now, we really don't have anything to go off on, or at least not enough for us to really say one way or the other, yes, this is where it's going to be, and yes, this is the tone it's going to go for. So instead, I think we're going to start running off some of my ideas, where this could take place and what I would like to see in it. Now, my ideas vary depending on what Starfield actually is. There's been some rumors that have been apparently debunked, but I'm not sure if that's entirely legit or not, because this whole thing has been a mess in terms of the rumors over the past few years. But there was a rumor going around that Starfield would use procedural generation to make some of the extra places to go. Like, you'd have about 4 planets that were handcrafted, like a lot of Bethesda stuff, but you'd also have surrounding planets and whatnot that were procedurally generated, kinda like other games. This upset and scared a lot of people, and whereas I can't exactly hold it against them, considering how other games have used procedural generation, this may come as a surprise, but Bethesda has been using procedural generation for years. In fact, I think the earliest use of it was all the way back in Daggerfall, but they've been using it as recently as in Fallout 4, and not just for mission type stuff, but for stuff like generating random pieces of the terrain, such as grass and whatnot. From what this rumor was going on about, it sounded like that if it were true, that Bethesda was planning on balancing the procedural generation with handcrafted material. Think of it this way. Whereas other games might use procedural generation in a way where it's basically off the rails or has very little guidance, this sounded like Bethesda was planning on keeping it on rails. Which at first sounds limiting, but when you realize just how crazy procedural generation can get, yeah, that's actually a smart move. And again, though there are a lot of people saying that this rumor has been defunct, and I personally don't put too much stock in rumors, we honestly have no way of knowing one way or the other. Well, if certain games are anything to go by, we don't even have any way of verifying what rumors from the people making the games themselves are legit or not. But yeah, I'm very open-minded to Bethesda trying it out. Because imagine one of these big space games that uses procedural generation and all that stuff, but imagine what it would be like if it was done right. No 2 years of extra work, no stuck in alpha, beta, gamma, no buying $100,000 ship packs to keep it afloat. What if it was released and kept its promises at the start? Now, granted, Bethesda is known for bugs, so I'd obviously expect a heck of a lot of bugs, but maybe not as much as we're used to. As much as it kind of pains me to admit it, Bethesda has gotten better about their bugs over the years. Yeah, their games are still quite buggy, and sometimes I kind of feel of half a mind that the only reason they pushed for console mods is so they could get the unofficial patch on consoles, and they could get that part of their player base to shut up about the bugs. But having played Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Oblivion, Skyrim, and Fallout 4, I gotta say, Fallout 4 is probably the most stable of all the Bethesda games to date. I don't know what they're doing differently, or how they're doing it differently, but it seems that they're getting better and better about the bugs. They still have a long ways to go, and I'm still irritated that there are certain bugs that they simply refuse to patch out of their games, but they are making improvements, and I for one don't expect perfection. I expect effort. And they keep applying effort like that to the future titles, all of them across the board. I'm happy enough with that. Now, one story element that I may have been able to ferret out involves what we see in this trailer. Space station gets warped away by blah 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 blah, and that's it. Well, considering that most Fallout games start you off in a vault for you to eventually escape and get out into the wasteland, and most Elder Scrolls games start you off as a prisoner only for you to eventually escape your confines via one means or another, if I were a betting man, I'd say the wormhole thing may very well be our vault or our prison. What do I mean by that? Well, in both cases of the aforementioned other games, it seems to be done in order to offer contrast. With Fallout, you have this beautiful, pristine, lovely little slice of an alternate reality, futuristic retro Americana. You're safe and snug in your little vault, and things are starting to go downhill. In fact, they go downhill really, really quickly. But that's okay. You'll escape and things will be better. Oh god, this is a complete opposite of what I just left. That's pretty much how it goes. You have the sterile, more control, oppressive, and almost, for lack of a better word, dystopian vault, and then you make your way out to the wasteland. It's desolate, it's harsh, there are nightmares waiting for you at every turn, but you're free. Similar thing with the prisoner. You start off as some nameless prisoner. Nobody knows you, nobody cares about you, you could be ripped apart by rats right there in front of everyone, and nobody would bat an eyelash because you're that worthless, that insignificant. And then that happens, and you're free. You have a whole world of possibilities. You can go wherever you want, do whatever you want, be whom and whatever you want. I imagine this may very well be a similar case here. Imagine this, you're a scientist or a soldier who's signed up with NASA or the Space Force or whatever, and you get assigned a space station. Except it's this ungodly fossil, and you're honestly not much more than a glorified janitor at this point. You're bored out of your skull, you are wishing for something better. Something like all those science fiction shows you used to watch as a kid. Some grand space adventure. Next thing you know, a flash of light and you're somewhere completely different. With technology beyond your wildest dreams, with aliens at every corner. Instead of being stuck on this lousy space station at this dead-end job, you're free. You've got an entire galaxy to explore. Or at least an entire solar system. That's one possibility I've thought of. Now, some people might be worrying if this does take place in Sol, i.e. our solar system, that this pretty much rules out aliens and whatnot, because we won't be on any alien's homeworld or in any alien system or anything like that. That's not necessarily the case. I mean, every time we go to a different province in Elder Scrolls, we come across all kinds of members of different races that don't hail from that region. We can even be a member of one of those foreign species as well if we want. So, if you can play as characters other than human in Starfield, I'd imagine it worked pretty much the same way. Alright, since we can't really ferret out a specific aspect of the tone, i.e. science opera, science fiction, let's talk about game mechanics. We've already covered procedural generation, which Bethesda has used, sometimes not to the best of results, but a lot of times with at least passable results. One thing I'm thinking of is its weapons. Now, a lot of people weren't too fond of the quote-unquote infinite possible weapons in Fallout, and I do understand that, and I would have loved to have more unique looking weapons, but I've actually had a few thoughts about how we could kinda have the best of both worlds. I'm thinking you could either have weapons and armor, as well as quite possibly ships, we'll get back to that in a minute, that are essentially randomly generated and may have varying unique stats, but have them be okay without being all that great. And then you have these super rare, super exotic looking items that you have to complete quests for, or find at the end of special dungeons, or the Starfield equivalent of dungeons. Another idea I've had that kind of expands on this are unique components. You'd have the normal stuff like your freezing blaster or your electrifying energy sword that just has some nice bonuses on it, and then you'd have something similar to Crim's Tooth from Fallout 4, which is a very unique looking weapon, but have its stats be different than anything else you're going to come across in the game. Either being more powerful or just having extra unique features to it that other poison blades wouldn't. But instead of just the whole weapon or the weapon base being unique, have only one component have the unique ability. In Fallout 4, Crim's Tooth only had the special ability attached to the blade mod. By swapping that out with a normal blade, you could then transfer the unique looking Crim's Tooth, along with its poison effect, to another special machete, for instance, one that does bleeding damage, and then you have a unique looking machete that does both a lot of poison damage and a lot of bleeding damage. I think that was a brilliant move Bethesda made with that weapon, and my only regret is that they didn't apply that sort of thing to more weapons in the game. And I think they could. Imagine if every unique weapon, whether it was just a randomly generated one, or one of the really truly special ones that you actually want to complete quests in order to get, didn't have their unique effect or their unique appearance bound specifically to the weapon as a whole, but only to a component of that. You then extract that component and combine it with others. For instance, you find a special blaster's grip, a legendary blaster's focusing lens, and a bunch of other unique blaster components to make your own very unique original blaster weapon that plays into your strengths. Like, you can have a specific build for your character, and you can make this custom weapon out of unique components that you found from different unique weapons all over the place, and create something that really feeds into your build, either further amplifying the abilities you've chosen for your character, or covering the weaknesses that your build causes your character to have. For instance, if your character is a specialist in cryogenics and uses that in combat, you could develop this unique composite blaster that amplifies their ability to freeze their enemies and whatnot on an exponential level, or perhaps create some kind of unique composite armor that's designed to allows you to tank even the strongest fire-based attack. That would be amazing, especially if they applied this to ships. And though a lot of people don't think Bethesda's game engine can handle ships, as flying vehicles so far has proven elusive, again, you gotta keep in mind they are upgrading everything with this game. Even if it's not a completely brand new engine, it's a very, 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 very highly upgraded version of it. And spaceflight, from what I've gathered, is actually a lot easier to swing than planetary surface flight. Now, don't hold me to that. I could be very, very wrong, but from what I've been told by different people, flying a ship through outer space is a lot easier to swing than flying one through the air in a video game. Mostly because there's a lot less physical objects that you have to constantly keep track of. On the ground, there's random rocks, there's all the blades of grass, there's tons of other stuff. Bethesda still might not be able to manage much more on the ground than a slow horse, but they might be able to pull off spaceflight. In fact, I'd almost say they have to. A space game where there's no spaceships is kind of ridiculous, especially in this day and age. Now, something interesting I would like to address is how they might implement the settlement system, or at least something akin to it. Again, this was something that a lot of people didn't like. My biggest problem with it was that it was really shoved down our throats in Fallout 4 after it was promised that it wouldn't be. Personally, I enjoy the concept of settlement systems in games. I like building my own base. I like running my own base as long as it doesn't get to the point where I have to micromanage everything every second of the game, and I can't play any of the other game without having to let whatever I'm running fall apart. Fable 3, I see you over there. As long as I'm not having to micromanage anything, and I'm not being forced to do anything, I love settlement system-esque gimmicks in games, and I think this could be amazing. If done correctly, they could really take this to the next level. We're talking about massive planet-side bases, or perhaps even making your own space station. In fact, one interesting idea I just had is maybe drumming up your own capital ship. Instead of just getting a custom ship, having some kind of capital ship that you've made yourself completely from scratch that's specifically of your own design, as long as that design would work in the game's universe. I think that would be awesome. Also, I would love for there to be some form of research you have to do. Nothing that drones on too much and nothing that you'd be forced to do. For instance, you want to develop a new technology or something like that? You could either pay a decent chunk of money to have someone take care of that for you, or you could go on several quests where you have to actually read through the lore, or ask people about certain things, scan a number of things, experiment, and the technology might not work correctly, but even if it backfires, you would learn more about what you should and shouldn't do with it. I think that would be an awesome thing to add into the game. But one thing that I would really love to see in a game like this is some kind of option where you can take over enemy facilities and make them your own. And if something like that is implemented, I would love to see a system implemented in it similarly to what we saw in, and this is so obscure you might not even know I'm talking about, the Godfather 2. In there's a mechanic where you can attack an enemy facility by either sabotaging it, sabotaging those near it, attacking it directly, or sending your henchmen to do so and either letting them take care of it for you, or joining them after they've already begun the attack. I love that whole mechanic, and that sort of thing keeps pulling me back to that game. I love something like this, but expanded and taken to the next level in some kind of game like a BGS title, where you could develop your own crew of mercenaries or pirates or whatever, send them to either weaken or outright attack an enemy base or ship, and either let them try to take it for you or join them. And that's another thing, we need varying degrees of morality. Good, evil, and everything in between. That's my biggest complaint with Bethesda games as of late. It's you either have to be absolute good or absolute evil. You're either this nice person who's looking for their little lost boy in the butt crack of nowhere, or you're this wannabe raider that will murder everything in sight. Yeah, being absolute good and absolute evil should definitely be options, but I prefer to play the anti-hero. And my biggest complaint with Fallout 4 was that that was not really a feasible option, even with the DLC. About the only thing that wasn't cut and dry black or white was the Far Harbor DLC. Though that was morally ambiguous, it's not exactly what I was hoping for in terms of morality for the whole game, and that's just one instance. Now, as for the leveling system itself, actually, from what I've heard, Fallout 76 has a very interesting take on it, where you can't be a jack of all trades and get all abilities at once, but what you can do is as you level up, you get access to more and more advanced ability cards, and then you just assemble a collection of them whenever you level up. And every time you level up, you can swap them out or get new ones, but you have a set limit as to how many you can hold at any given time. I think something like this is a genius move, and though I certainly don't think they should throw in a carbon copy of this into Starfield or any of the other games, something that works along this line would be perfect for them, encouraging both character builds while not having anyone feel like they're stuck with a build they do not like, and even giving them the option to respec their character whenever they feel they really need to in order to tackle specific issues. I would really hope that something like this would be implemented into Starfield and Test 6 for that matter, because how many times have you played any kind of game where you level up and have unique abilities but have limits on which ones you can get and can't get all of them, where after a while certain abilities you picked at the beginning are no longer of any interest to you, weren't even an interest to you when you got them, but were essentially acting as a sort of brick wall keeping you from the abilities you wanted to get. This could be a very elegant way of killing that issue with fire, and I for one approve of that. I can't really think of anything else specifically that I could point to that I'd want without knowing more about the tone and nature of this game. So now I'm going to talk about perhaps our most important question revolving around this game. When's it coming out? I honestly don't know for sure, but smart money seems to be on 2019 or 2020. And considering that a lot of rumors seem to be suggesting that the next-gen consoles will roll out about 2019 or 2020, that's a pretty smart bet. Now, again, QuakeCon is just around the corner, and I can't tell you if we'll be getting any more information on either TESS or Starfield. Granted, I think it's more likely to expect Starfield info than TESS, considering how far away the latter is, but even so, I'm not sure if we'll be getting any more information except maybe about Fallout 76. But if any more does come out on Starfield, I may talk about that. For now though, I believe that's the Starfield topic wrapped up. And wow, this has been a journey. I have put a lot of work into this, and I've had a lot of obstacles pop out of thin air, keeping me from getting this done. I'd like to say thank you to all of you who've stopped in to watch and who've put up with me not being able to get this out sooner. This has been a long and tedious journey, and now that this is all wrapped up, I'm looking forward to getting back to normal, for the most part. Let's just say this was more than just a test to see how I felt about doing things other than Let's Plays. Well, that's it. I'm tired, and I've got a lot more stuff I gotta do now. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments down below, and I'll be happy to get to them ASAP. And while you're at it, check out the videos I've linked in the description. All these guys did a lot of hard work, and are probably more knowledgeable about this stuff than I am, and you should check them out. And tell them who sent you. This has been CHA0SXIII signing out. Have a good one. Hey, this is CHA0SXIII. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, like it. If you loved it, share it. If you didn't, then don't. To each their own. If you want more, then hit that subscribe button, smash the notification bell next to it, stalk me on my social medias, and comment down below. Also, check out my other videos. You might find something else you like. Until then, later.